I was fired without notice, with no explanation. And that's when I realized I had been living a lie all along. Lily Stone's heart pounded in her chest as she stood outside her boss's office, a small envelope in her hand. It contained the termination notice, official and cold. No warning, no chance to defend herself, just a decision that seemed to come out of nowhere. She stared at the paper, trying to process the words, the weight of them sinking into her gut like a stone. I thought I had a future here, that I was valued. But apparently, I was just another cog in the machine. The dismissal felt personal. It wasn't just about losing her job, it was the betrayal. She had poured everything into her work, sacrificed countless evenings and weekends, and this was how it ended. She had worked hard, climbed the corporate ladder, and earned the trust of her team. But none of that mattered now. All her efforts were reduced to a single sheet of paper. Lily couldn't breathe. It felt like her entire world was crumbling. She sat in her car, gripping the steering wheel, staring blankly at the rearview mirror. Her mind raced. How could this happen? She had been loyal. She had been the go-to person, the one they turned to when things got tough. And yet, here she was, out of a job, no warning, no explanation. The reality was harsh, but it was undeniable. This wasn't fair. None of it was fair. Lily thought back to her long hours at the office, the missed family dinners, the weekends spent working while everyone else enjoyed their lives. She had made sacrifices, believing that her loyalty would eventually be rewarded. But now, as she sat in the quiet of her car, she realized the truth. She had been nothing more than expendable. The realization stung like an open wound. But Lily wasn't the type to wallow. She wasn't the type to let this defeat her. She had a fire inside her, a fire that had been smoldering for years. She wasn't just going to take this lying down. No, she was going to turn this around. This wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. The anger started to bubble up inside her. But instead of letting it consume her, she took a deep breath and made a decision. She was going to take control of her destiny. If they don't want me, then fine, she muttered under her breath. But I'll show them just what I'm capable of. As the days passed, Lily's sense of betrayal began to fuel her determination. She wasn't going to let this define her. She was going to fight back. And not just in any way. She would buy the company. The thought came to her in a quiet moment of reflection. It sounded impossible, but then again, what did she have to lose? She had nothing left to lose. She had been humiliated, discarded, and pushed aside. But that didn't mean she had to stay down. The fire inside her burned brighter than ever, and it fueled a new kind of clarity. She started researching. She contacted financial advisors, explored business opportunities, and learned everything she could about acquiring a company. The more she learned, the more she realized that it was possible. Maybe not easy, but it was within reach. The dream started to feel less like a fantasy and more like a reality. But first, she needed to figure out how to make it happen. The process wouldn't be quick, and it wouldn't be easy. But Lily was determined. She had already proven to herself that she could do hard things. This was just another challenge, one that she was ready to face head-on. With each passing day, the idea of buying the company became more real. Lily worked tirelessly, using every ounce of her energy to make it happen. She reached out to investors, networked with industry insiders, and began to put together a plan. She was no longer the employee who had been fired without notice. She was a force to be reckoned with. This was her second chance. And this time, she wouldn't let anyone take it away from her. As the days passed after Lily Stone's shocking dismissal, the anger inside her began to shift. What once felt like a crushing blow turned into a spark. She couldn't stay in her small apartment forever, moping over a job that had taken so much from her. She needed a new goal, something big enough to drown out the bitter feelings of betrayal. The idea came to her one evening as she sat in her living room, the soft glow of the lamp flickering in the corner of the room. She wasn't just going to find another job. No, she would do something that would change everything. She would buy the company that had cast her aside. The thought felt crazy at first, but the more she thought about it, the more it felt like the only option. Lily wasn't a stranger to hard work. She had put in years at the company, and no one could deny that she had earned her place there. It was time to turn that experience into something bigger. If they didn't want me, then I would make them regret it, Lily thought to herself. The plan started small. She began by researching. She spent hours reading up on business acquisitions, on companies that were struggling and might be ripe for a buyout. She learned the ins and outs of finance, how mergers and acquisitions worked, and what it would take to secure the funding. At first, it was daunting. The idea of buying a company, especially one as big as the one she had worked for, seemed impossible. But Lily wasn't one to back down from a challenge. She kept pushing forward, using her network of contacts from her years in the industry to start gathering information. She met with financial advisors and lawyers who could guide her through the process. They told her it wouldn't be easy, that she would have to convince investors, navigate a sea of legalities, and find a way to make the deal work. But Lily wasn't intimidated. Each obstacle she faced only fueled her determination to succeed. Weeks turned into months as Lily worked tirelessly on her plan. She wasn't just trying to buy a company. She was building a future. Every email she sent, every phone call she made, and every meeting she attended brought her one step closer to her goal. There were moments of doubt, of course. Sometimes, when the weight of it all felt too heavy, Lily would pause, take a deep breath, and remind herself why she was doing this. She was doing it for herself. She was doing it to prove that she was more than just a person who had been fired. She was capable of so much more. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. A contact of hers, a former colleague who had moved on to a different company, reached out with an opportunity. It turned out that the company Lily had once worked for was struggling financially. The leadership was disorganized, and there were rumors that the company might be sold off to the highest bidder. Lily saw her chance. She didn't waste any time. She called her advisors, gathered the necessary paperwork, and began to put together a deal. The excitement was overwhelming, but she kept her cool. She knew that this was the moment she had been waiting for. She had to make it count. As the weeks passed, Lily's plans began to fall into place. She secured the funds she needed, lined up investors who believed in her vision, and prepared for the final stages of the acquisition. It wasn't easy, and there were times when it felt like everything could fall apart. But Lily kept pushing forward, driven by a vision of herself as the owner of the company. Finally, after months of hard work, Lily stood in front of the final contract. The deal was done. She had bought the company. The feeling of accomplishment was indescribable. She had turned a painful chapter of her life into one of the most empowering moments of her career. As she signed the final papers, Lily couldn't help but smile. It wasn't just about owning the company. It was about proving to herself, and to everyone who had ever doubted her, that she was more than capable of turning her dreams into reality. Lily was no longer the employee who had been fired without notice. She was the boss, and she was ready to take control of her future. The day the deal was finalized, Lily sat alone in her office, staring at the papers in front of her. The weight of the accomplishment hadn't fully sunk in yet. She had done it. After all the sleepless nights, the endless meetings, and the countless setbacks, she had actually pulled it off. The company that had fired her, that had cast her aside without a second thought, was now hers. The office felt different now, empty, but in a way that felt like a new beginning. She reached for her coffee, her hands steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. She had to stay composed. It wasn't over yet. Lily's mind raced with the next steps. There was a lot to be done now that she owned the company. She needed to reorganize, revamp the management structure, and most importantly, establish her authority. She wasn't just going to be a figurehead. She was going to take control. Her first move was clear. She needed to meet with the leadership team, the ones who had been running the company when she was fired. They would need to understand that things were about to change. Lily had learned from her time in the trenches. She had been underestimated, but now it was her turn to call the shots. She picked up her phone and called her assistant to schedule the meeting. As the days went by, Lily settled into her new role. She spent long hours learning the ins and outs of the company, reviewing financial reports, and meeting with key players. But the most difficult part was yet to come, the confrontation. It had been 2 weeks since the acquisition was completed, and Lily knew it was time to face her former boss. The one who had made the decision to fire her without a second thought. The one who had never believed in her potential. She couldn't let him get away with it. She needed to show him who was in charge now. The meeting was set for the following Monday. Lily spent the weekend preparing. She wrote down her talking points, made sure she had all the facts, and mentally rehearsed everything she planned to say. She wasn't going to make the mistake of showing any weakness. When Monday arrived, Lily walked into the conference room with her head held high. The room was filled with the same people who had been at her dismissal meeting. Her former boss, a man named Thomas Grant, was sitting at the head of the table. He looked surprised to see her, but Lily wasn't here for pleasantries. "Good morning, everyone," she said, her voice steady and confident. "I wanted to thank you all for meeting with me today. As you know, I am now the owner of this company, and I intend to run it differently than you've been accustomed to." She paused for a moment, letting the weight of her words sink in. "There will be changes, and I will be making the decisions from now on." Thomas shifted in his seat, his face a mask of disbelief. "Lily," he began, "I'm sure you know this isn't how things are usually done." Lily smiled, a small but firm smile. "I'm well aware, Thomas, but I've never been one to follow the usual way. I've always believed in proving myself." The tension in the room was palpable. Lily could feel the eyes of the leadership team on her, some of them uncomfortable, others impressed by her confidence. She had their attention now. "As for the decisions you've made in the past," she continued, "I won't be reversing them, but I will be reviewing everything. The company's future depends on how well we adapt to new challenges, and I'm ready to lead us into that future." There was a long silence as the group processed her words. Then Thomas spoke again, this time with a hint of frustration. "I don't know if you're ready for this, Lily. You've never run a company before." Lily's eyes locked onto his, and for a moment, there was no doubt in her mind. She wasn't backing down. "I may not have run a company before, Thomas, but I know what it takes to succeed. I've been through the grind. I've put in the hours, the work, and I've learned more than you'll ever know. And now, I'm going to show you what I can do." The meeting ended with a sense of finality. Lily had made her point. She had taken control, and now it was time to prove herself. As she walked out of the room, she felt a sense of pride. She had done it. She had faced her fears and had come out on top. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready. The real work had just begun, and Lily Stone was more determined than ever to make her mark on the company and the world. The weeks that followed Lily's meeting with the leadership team were filled with challenges, but they also brought her a sense of purpose that she hadn't felt in years. Every day, she immersed herself deeper into the company, learning the ins and outs of every department, meeting with employees, and analyzing the financials. She wasn't just a new boss. She was a new force in the company. The team, once skeptical, began to see her as a serious leader. But there were still obstacles. Lily had been preparing for a major project, a new initiative that could either make or break the company. It was a risky move, but one that she believed could secure her place as the rightful leader of the business. The project involved launching a new product line, something the company had been talking about for years but had never executed. The idea had been shelved time and time again, dismissed by the old management team as too ambitious. But Lily wasn't afraid of ambition. She believed in the power of innovation, and she knew that the company had the potential to be much more than it was. She had done her research and put together a proposal that she knew would work. But when she brought it to the table, she met with resistance. Thomas, her former boss, was still around, though now only as a consultant. He was dismissive of her ideas, suggesting they focus on more traditional approaches that had worked in the past. "This isn't the time for big risks, Lily," he said, his voice full of condescension. "You need to think small. Stay within our comfort zone." But Lily was done playing it safe. "If we stay in our comfort zone, we'll never grow. We'll just fade into obscurity," she replied, her tone firm. The rest of the team seemed to hesitate, unsure whether they should side with the old regime or support Lily's vision. It was a crucial moment. Lily stood up, her eyes sweeping across the room. "This company is at a crossroads," she said, her voice steady. "We either innovate or we die. I'm not asking for your approval. I'm telling you this is the direction we're going in." The room was silent for a moment, but then something shifted. The resistance in the room began to fade. One by one, the team members began to nod, some reluctantly, others with growing excitement. It wasn't easy, but they saw the passion in Lily's eyes, the same passion that had driven her to this point. They were starting to believe in her. Over the next few months, Lily worked tirelessly to get the project off the ground. She worked late into the night, fine-tuning the details, reaching out to suppliers, and making sure everything was in place. She was no longer just an employee, no longer just a former manager. She was a visionary, a leader who was willing to do whatever it took to make her vision a reality. And slowly, things began to fall into place. The project came together better than anyone had expected. The product line was a hit, and sales exceeded projections. The company was growing again, and it was all because of Lily's determination to take risks and innovate. But despite her success, there was still a sense of tension in the office. Thomas had been quiet since the launch, but Lily knew he wasn't happy about the changes she had brought to the company. She didn't mind. She knew that he would never understand her vision. He was stuck in the past, unwilling to embrace the future. But Lily wasn't. And as she sat in her office, looking out at the city skyline, she knew that she had made the right choice. She had taken control of her destiny, and the company was better for it. She wasn't just a boss now. She was a leader who had proven that she could make things happen. And no one, not even Thomas, could take that away from her. The company had turned a corner, but Lily knew the work was far from over. She had proven herself capable of making bold decisions and bringing success, but now she had to navigate the real test of leadership, handling the internal politics of the company. The board of directors, while supportive of the recent successes, were still skeptical. They hadn't fully embraced the shift in direction Lily had implemented. Some were loyal to the old guard, still thinking of Thomas's ways as the only path to success. They respected Lily for her determination, but there was a lingering question. Could she sustain this success, or was it just a lucky break? Lily couldn't afford to let doubt linger. Every day, she stepped into the office with the weight of proving herself all over again. She needed to make sure her success wasn't a one-off, that she could continue to push the company forward without falling back into old habits. So, she doubled down. She introduced more changes, new systems for tracking productivity, new incentives to encourage innovation, and most importantly, she began pushing her team to take risks. "We need to stay ahead of the curve," she said during one of the weekly meetings. "We're not just a company, we're a force in the industry, and forces don't stand still." The room was silent for a moment before the first hesitant nods came. The team had already seen what she could do. The numbers didn't lie, but there was a different kind of pressure now. Lily was no longer the underdog fighting for her place. She was the boss, the one calling the shots. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when her decisions were challenged, when the board questioned the risks she was taking, when employees were hesitant about the changes. But Lily wasn't one to back down. She'd fought too hard to let fear control her now. She had been fired without a second thought by people who didn't believe in her. Now, she was the one with the power to make decisions that could shape the future of the company. There were still obstacles. Lily had always known that leadership wasn't just about making the right decisions. It was about keeping everyone moving in the same direction. There were days when she felt like she was holding everything together by a thread. But those days were fewer and fewer. As she worked to solidify her vision for the company, she also worked on creating a culture where people weren't afraid to speak up, to offer ideas, and to make mistakes. She wanted to build a place where innovation wasn't just a buzzword, but a real part of the company's DNA. The first quarter after the new product launch had been a success, but it was just the beginning. Lily knew the real test was sustainability. She couldn't afford to rest on her laurels. There were competitors watching, waiting for her to slip up, to show weakness. But Lily was determined to keep going. She wasn't just fighting for her success. She was fighting for her team, for the people who believed in her when the odds were stacked against her. A month later, as she sat in the conference room, reviewing the latest round of reports, Lily felt a wave of satisfaction. The company was thriving, the employees were more engaged than ever, and the numbers were solid. She looked around the room at her leadership team, her team now. "This is just the beginning," she said, her voice steady, filled with quiet confidence. "We're going to continue pushing forward. We're going to continue growing. And we're going to do it together." The team exchanged glances, and for the first time in a long while, Lily felt the full weight of her success. Not just the success of the company, but her own. She had taken the risks, made the tough decisions, and faced down every challenge that had come her way. And now, she had proven that she was more than just an employee who had been fired without notice. She was a leader, a force to be reckoned with, and there was no stopping her now. The company was moving in the right direction, but Lily knew that there was always something more to do. The excitement of the new product launch had started to fade, and now, it was time to focus on the future. The team was growing, and so were the challenges. Every day, Lily made decisions that affected not just the company's bottom line, but the lives of her employees. She knew that leadership wasn't just about making bold moves. It was about listening, understanding, and guiding her team to success. But not everyone was on board with the changes she was making. There were murmurs in the hallways, whispers about how Lily was running the company differently than Thomas ever did. Some of the old-timers were starting to question whether the new direction was truly sustainable. Lily could hear the doubt in their voices, even when they tried to mask it with polite smiles. But she wasn't afraid. She had faced worse. She had been fired without warning, and now she was running the show. If they wanted to question her leadership, she would prove them wrong, just like she had done before. One afternoon, Lily was sitting in her office, reviewing the latest round of reports when her phone rang. It was Sarah, one of the senior managers who had been with the company for over 15 years. "Lily, can we talk?" Sarah's voice was soft, but filled with uncertainty. Lily knew what was coming. "Sure, come to my office." Sarah arrived a few minutes later, her face tense, as if she had been carrying something heavy. She sat across from Lily, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I've been thinking a lot about the direction we're going in," Sarah began, her voice cautious. "I'm not sure if the changes you're making are really in the best interest of the company." Lily took a deep breath, trying not to show the frustration she was feeling. She had expected this. There would always be resistance when you tried to shake things up, but she wasn't going to back down. "I understand your concerns, Sarah," Lily said calmly, meeting her gaze. "But we can't keep doing things the way we always have. The world is changing, and we need to change with it if we're going to stay ahead." Sarah looked at her, her eyes filled with doubt. "But some of the things you're pushing for, they're risky. I don't know if the team is ready for all these changes." Lily nodded slowly, acknowledging the fear in Sarah's voice. "I know it's difficult. Change always is. But we're at a crossroads. If we don't take risks now, we'll be left behind. And I don't plan to let that happen." Sarah remained silent for a moment, as if weighing her options. Finally, she spoke. "I want to believe in you, Lily. I really do. But it's hard. I've seen what's happened in the past. I've seen companies fall apart because of one bad decision." Lily leaned forward, her voice steady and firm. "I'm not asking you to follow me blindly, but I need you to trust that I know what I'm doing. We're building something better here, something that will stand the test of time. But it won't happen unless we take these risks." Sarah's gaze softened, and for the first time in their conversation, Lily saw a glimmer of understanding. "Okay," Sarah said finally, her voice quiet but resolute. "I'll support you, but you have to promise me that we'll do this together, that we'll all be in this together." Lily smiled, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. "I promise. We're in this together, Sarah, and we're going to make this work." The conversation was a turning point for Lily. It wasn't just about convincing Sarah to believe in her vision. It was about proving to herself that she could lead the team through uncertainty. As the days passed, Lily continued to face challenges, but each one only strengthened her resolve. She knew that being a leader wasn't just about making decisions. It was about inspiring others to believe in the vision and to work together to make it happen. Slowly but surely, the team began to fall into line. They started to see the changes as opportunities, not threats. Lily's leadership was no longer in question. She had earned their trust, and now, it was time to push forward. The future was still uncertain, but Lily was ready for whatever came next. She had fought her way to the top, and she wasn't going to let anything or anyone stop her from leading this company to greatness. The months passed, and Lily's leadership continued to solidify as the company adapted to her vision. However, she knew that true success wasn't just about the numbers. It was about creating a legacy, something that would stand the test of time. She was no longer just focused on the growth of the company. Now, she was focused on building a culture. One afternoon, as Lily walked through the office, she noticed a shift in the atmosphere. Employees seemed more engaged, conversations around the water cooler were filled with excitement, and there was a sense of camaraderie in the air. For the first time, Lily felt like she was not just a leader, but a part of a team. She had built something more than a business. She had built a community. But that sense of unity was soon put to the test. The company was about to face its biggest challenge yet. A competitor had emerged, one that was poised to take away a large portion of their market share. Lily knew that this was her moment to prove that her vision was more than just a passing trend. This was where she would either sink or swim. The pressure mounted as Lily and her team began strategizing ways to respond. The competition was fierce, and it seemed like every move they made was met with resistance from the other side. But Lily refused to back down. She wasn't going to let the company she had built fall apart so easily. She spent sleepless nights working with her team, coming up with innovative solutions to stay ahead. Every time she felt like giving up, she reminded herself of the journey she had been on, the obstacles she had already overcome. If she could survive being fired without notice, then she could certainly handle this. Weeks passed as the battle between the companies intensified. There were moments of doubt, moments when Lily questioned whether the company could keep up with the aggressive tactics of their competitor. But then she saw the team rallying around her. They believed in her, and they believed in the vision she had set forth. Lily knew that this wasn't just about outsmarting the competition, it was about outlasting them. She made the decision to stay the course, to continue building the foundation she had started. She knew that success wasn't always immediate. It was about the long haul, the grind, and the ability to stay focused even when the odds were stacked against you. It was at this moment that Lily realized the true value of leadership. It wasn't about having all the answers or always being the smartest person in the room. It was about bringing people together, fostering an environment where everyone felt invested in the company's success. As the weeks turned into months, the company began to show signs of recovery. The innovative strategies they had implemented started to pay off, and soon, they were back on top. The competitor that had once seemed like an insurmountable obstacle was now struggling to keep up. Lily had done it again. She had turned what seemed like an impossible situation into another victory. But this time, it was different. This time, she had built something that was sustainable. She had created a company that wasn't just chasing after the next big thing, it was shaping the future. Lily sat in her office one evening, staring out at the city lights. The journey had been long and hard, but she had made it. She had proven to herself, and to everyone who doubted her, that she was capable of more than just surviving. She was thriving. And with that realization came a quiet sense of pride. She had earned her place at the top, and now, she was going to make sure the company stayed there. The road ahead would undoubtedly have more challenges, but Lily was no longer afraid. She was ready for whatever came next. Months passed, and Lily's company continued to thrive under her leadership. But as she sat in her office, reviewing the latest reports, she knew that the real test was still ahead. The business world was never static, and there were always new challenges lurking around the corner. The competition was fierce, and every decision she made would determine whether the company would stay on top or fall back into the chaos it had faced before. She had worked hard to get to this point, but Lily was no longer the underdog fighting for her place. She was now the one in charge, and that brought its own set of challenges. She had learned that leadership wasn't just about making the right decisions. It was about making the tough decisions when no one else would. And now, she had to make the toughest one yet. The company had received an acquisition offer. The buyer was a large corporation, one with deep pockets and an impressive track record. They had done their homework and knew exactly what the company was worth. On paper, it was a good deal. The offer was generous, and it would secure the company's future financially. But Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. She had built this company from the ground up. Every decision, every risk, had been her own. The idea of selling it felt like giving up, like throwing away everything she had worked for. But she also knew the reality. The company had grown rapidly, and with that growth came new complexities. She couldn't do everything herself. The company needed more resources, more infrastructure. Was it time to step back and let someone else take the reins? She didn't have the answers. Lily sat at her desk, staring at the offer letter in front of her. The numbers were tempting. The safety it promised was undeniable. But at what cost? Was she ready to give up the company she had fought so hard to build? Her mind raced as she weighed the pros and cons. As much as she hated to admit it, the offer made sense. The company could expand, its reach could grow, and its future would be secured. But Lily wasn't someone who took the easy way out. She wasn't someone who walked away from a fight. And selling the company felt like giving up on everything she had worked for. She needed advice, but there was only one person she trusted to give her an honest opinion. Sarah, her senior manager, had been with the company since the early days, and Lily valued her insight. Sarah was loyal, smart, and never afraid to speak her mind. When Lily called her into the office, she could tell by Sarah's face that something was off. "You look like you've been thinking about something heavy," Lily said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Sarah sat down, her expression serious. "I have," she said, her voice quiet. "I've been thinking about the offer." Lily nodded. So have I. What do you think? Sarah paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts. I think it's a great offer. On paper, it's the right move for the company. But I also think it's not the only option. We've built something special here, Lily. And maybe we need to take a step back and ask ourselves what we really want. Lily leaned back in her chair, her fingers drumming on the desk. What do you mean? I mean, we've been running at full speed for so long. We haven't really thought about what's next. We've built this company into something incredible, but it's not just about growth anymore. It's about staying true to our values, staying true to what we set out to do. Lily considered Sarah's words. She had a point. The company had grown exponentially, but at what cost? They had taken on so many new projects, expanded so quickly, and now, it felt like they were being pulled in 1,000 different directions. So what do we do? Lily asked. Do we take the offer? Sarah shook her head. I don't know, but I do know that we need to make this decision from a place of strength, not fear. We've built something amazing here, and we shouldn't just sell it because it's easier. If we decide to move forward, we need to do it on our terms. Lily's heart swelled with pride as she listened to Sarah. This was why she had fought so hard for this company. This was why she had taken the risks, made the tough calls, and pushed forward every day. She didn't want to give up. She didn't want to sell. She wanted to build something that would last, something that would continue to grow, but on her terms. With a deep breath, Lily made her decision. We're not selling, she said firmly. We're going to find a way to grow the company, but we're going to do it our way. Sarah smiled, her eyes filled with pride. I knew you'd say that. Lily stood up from her desk and walked to the window, looking out over the city. There was still so much to be done, so much to build, but for the first time in a long while, Lily felt confident in her decision. She wasn't going to give up the company. She was going to take it to new heights. And nothing, not even an acquisition offer, was going to stop her. Lily stood in front of the full-length window of her office, looking out at the city skyline as the sun began to set. The decision to reject the acquisition offer had felt like the right one, but now that the dust had settled, she knew the real challenge was just beginning. She had made the choice to fight for the company, to keep it independent, and to continue building on the foundation she had worked so hard to create. But with that choice came more responsibility, more risks, and more obstacles. Lily knew that to stay ahead, to prove that her decision had been the right one, she had to think even bigger. The company was at a critical point. They had made great strides, but the competition was fierce, and they couldn't afford to be complacent. Lily had spent the last few days meeting with her leadership team, discussing strategies, and brainstorming new initiatives. They were all in agreement. Growth was essential. But it wasn't just about expanding the product line or opening new markets. Lily wanted to do something that would make the company stand out, something that would push them beyond just being another business in the industry. We need to change the game, she had told her team during the meeting. We need to think about how we can innovate in ways that no one else is doing. We need to take risks, but calculated risks that will set us apart. The team had listened, and they had trusted her. It wasn't just about leading. It was about creating a culture where everyone felt empowered to think outside the box, to challenge the status quo, and to take ownership of the company's future. And that's exactly what Lily did next. She pushed forward with an initiative to create a new division within the company, one dedicated to research and development, focused on groundbreaking technology and new, innovative ideas. The idea was simple. Rather than waiting for trends to emerge, they would be the ones setting the trends. It was a bold move, but Lily knew it was the right one. They needed to stay ahead of the curve, and if they were going to do that, they had to invest in the future. The team wasn't initially sure what to make of the idea. It was a big leap, and there was a lot of uncertainty about how to go about it. But Lily's confidence was contagious, and slowly, the team began to get behind her vision. They started making plans, reaching out to industry experts, and organizing brainstorming sessions. And before long, they had the groundwork for what could be the next big thing in their industry. It wasn't easy. There were bumps along the way, moments of doubt, and setbacks that threatened to derail the project. But Lily didn't let it stop her. She knew that the only way to succeed was to push through the challenges, learn from mistakes, and keep moving forward. And that's exactly what they did. As the months went by, the new division began to take shape. They developed partnerships with cutting-edge tech companies, created prototypes, and began testing new products. It wasn't long before they had something truly groundbreaking in their hands, a product that could change the way the industry operated. Lily couldn't have been more proud of what they had achieved. The sense of accomplishment was overwhelming, but it was also just the beginning. The company was on the verge of something big, something that would not only secure its place at the top, but also redefine the industry. But even with all the success, Lily knew that leadership wasn't just about achieving milestones. It was about maintaining the vision, staying true to the values that had brought her this far, and never losing sight of the bigger picture. As she stood in her office, looking out over the city, she felt a quiet sense of pride. She had fought for this company, and now it was hers. The road ahead was still uncertain, but Lily was no longer afraid. She had built something from the ground up, and she was ready for whatever came next.